Hello. Welcome. It's Twanna, your anxiety and career coach. So, give me a couple of moments. I want to bring on my Facebook crew. Hello. Welcome, everybody. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. So I want to bring in a couple of groups. I'm simultaneously doing a YouTube live as well as a Facebook live. So I just want to give everybody a chance to hop on to be sure everybody gets a chance to come on and hear. Got a good motivational nugget for you today. I like to call them motivational nuggets. Those are things that kind of little pick you up. I love chocolate. Let me just disclose, I love chocolate. So when I think about nuggets, I think about something that's good for you, something that makes you feel good. And in my case, chocolate is helpful. Maybe I'm stretching it a little bit, but not really, because I do try to eat mainly dark chocolate. So I know as long as I do it in moderation, it'll be okay. And so that's my story. I'm sticking to it. That's why I call these things motivational nuggets. So I just want to be sure that everybody has jumped on and has time to see our motivational nugget today. So hopefully your day has went well. I was fairly excited today. I am in the DC area, and thank you. It was 70 degrees today. Yes. Oh my gosh. Spring is right around the corner, and I say that because this is the DC, Maryland area. So old man winter can come back and surprise us, but I know of a surety that spring is not that far away, and I'm excited about it. I am truly an Alabama girl, born in Alabama, raised everywhere. I'm an Army brat, but I was mainly raised in the South, so I love my warm weather, and I'm always excited to see March roll around. Now, I was home last month, and it was already warm. Home is Alabama for me. So I am truly excited about this warm weather. Love it. Summer is actually my best time of the year, my favorite time of the year, but spring is right behind summer. I love spring. I love knowing that in a few moments, a few hours or a few days, a few weeks, the warm weather is on the way. I love the spring flowers and I love the springtime. Sometimes the pollen's not that great to me, but that's okay. I love spring and I love summer. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If you looked at the question today, you'll see that I asked the question, is anxiety your enemy? It's a good question, right? Very good question. Oftentimes, there are 15 million people that struggle with anxiety. And I'm basically moving away from people being sick because in the middle of the Facebook and YouTube live, but that's okay. We'll be okay. So I'm getting away from saying people are sick with anxiety or casting it as this awful thing. And for some people that struggle with anxiety, it is a tough battle. But our words do matter. And so you're here to be transferring over to say those people that struggle with anxiety or you are challenged by anxiety, because it is a struggle and it is a challenge. Some of us more than others. And so I'm looking at how I use it, because like I said, it does matter. And so saying, when I say is anxiety your enemy, you got to think about how you look at your enemy, right? Anytime something is deemed your enemy, you're always ready to fight. You're ready to stand up and do battle. Sometimes you got to be ready to split or run, because if something's your enemy, it means it's a danger to you. Most of us don't get relaxed around our enemies. We don't invite them into our house and say, hey, you're welcome to everything here, because guess what? you are my enemy. We don't do that. Not to somebody as our enemy. We do that to friends. We invite, at least our good friends. Frenemy is a whole different thing. We're not going to talk about frenemies today. We're going to talk about enemies. So yes, enemies. So you invite your friends to the house, you fellowship with them, you tend to let your guard down, you enjoy your friends. But when I say enemy, that word even kind of sounds like, oh yeah, enemy. Mm-mm. The problem is this: if you view anxiety as your enemy, that means you're constantly fighting it, right? It is a fight. It is unwelcome. It means you no good. It is bad for you, because that's kind of what we think about our enemies, right? The problem is this is anxiety follows you wherever you go. If you struggle with it, it's there. When you go to sleep, it's there. When you wake up, it's there. And sometimes you're absolutely fine, and you go in, somewhere and like, wham, oh, there's anxiety. So if you look at anxiety as your enemy, then your enemy is whenever you're struggling with it, your enemy is there, right? And so we don't want to always think of anxiety as your enemy, because danger, be alert, be wary, because that's what we do around our enemies. So, well, what the heck? Twanna, what do you mean anxiety's not my enemy? Who wants to suffer with anxiety, right? Who wants to struggle with anxiety? Okay. At its point, at its most elemental point, anxiety is there to protect us. It really is. Came down through thousands of years, our ancestors, they needed to understand when you're living out in the wild, or you living in strange lands and whatnot, you need to know what's your enemy, and you need to know what's not your enemy. And I know we can go to that, especially way back when this family was your enemy and that one wasn't, and we're always ready to fight. Let's take it out of that realm. Let's look at plants, right? Let's look at plants, because now most of us, we go to the grocery store, and we know typically when we walk up and see mushrooms, we know those mushrooms are not poisonous to us. They're not a danger to us, unless of course you have an allergy to mushrooms. Then yeah, that's a danger to you. But if you don't have an allergy to a mushroom, you go into the grocery store, you go to a farmer's market, we feel pretty safe, right? Pick the mushrooms up, go home, and do what we need to do and prepare them. But in the 1800s and the 1700s and the 1600s, early 1900s, you needed to be aware of what mushrooms were poisonous and which ones are not. Okay, and so if you came up on a group of mushrooms and you're starving hungry, your anxiety needs to be peaked a little bit, because if you pick the wrong mushroom, you will never know it was a wrong mushroom, because it doesn't take much to poison you and die, certain mushrooms, right? So there's some kind of angst, like, I need to get this right. I need to be sure this is the right one. That's what anxiety was for. Anxiety said when you saw a snake and you hear, you see a snake, you get this anxious, you get this blood rush, your heart starts pumping, and your body goes into alert. Do I need to fight, or do I need to go? Because until you identify the snake as friend or foe, and for me, I want to be honest with you, all snakes are foe to me. I don't like them. They're all a foe to me. So anytime I see a snake, I go into fight or flight, right? Because every snake is a danger to me. Now, I do know people, have friends, they know the poisonous snakes from the safe snakes. For me, I assume they're all poisonous because I am afraid of snakes, and I go into fight or flight mode every single time. I had a friend of mine that, bless her heart, I was a science teacher at the time, and she was a science teacher, and she was complaining to me that she was tired of finding snakes in her house, baby snakes. And my eyes was like, you're still living in the house? And she's like, yeah, I just sweep them out the door. And so obviously the mother has laid eggs somewhere in the house. And, I swept like 3 or 4 of them out of the door, and I sweep them out, and they're not poisonous or anything, and they're not going to harm you. Me, I already knew. If some snakes hatched in my house, it was no sweeping them out the door, because they're harmless. It was sell the house, we're out, we're done. Okay, because my fight or flight said get out. But for her, she saw the snake. It wasn't a fight or flight thing for her. She knew the type of snake was. It was not a poisonous snake, and she was fine. On the other hand, me, if I hadn't had a stroke when I saw the snakes plural in my house, I would be packing up and I'd be moving. Okay, because that fight or flight in me would have kicked in to say, yep, we're leaving, get your babies and let's go. Right? So anxiety was never meant to be a harm to us. Anxiety was protective for us. That's the whole basis of anxiety. It's a protective force. The thing is, now we don't necessarily, some of us don't see snakes all the time. And we don't have to run for wild animals. And depending on where you live, if you live in the country, that's kind of more, you go hiking, you're going to have that fight or flight, that anxiety mechanism working for you. But for a lot of us, we live in a civilized situation. We don't need to always be worried about, is that a danger? Is this animal going to do this? Do I need to run or do I need to fight? And so we still have the anxiety, right? The anxiety still works. And for some of us, it works perfectly. It works a lot better in some of us than others. And so we have some excess anxiety, right? The thing is we have to stop looking at the anxiety as an enemy. Because if you look at it as an enemy, you live with it 24/7. It is there. You know what? Your brain picks up, there's a lot of data through our senses, be it smell, sight, touch, taste. We pick up a lot of data through our senses that before we ever know it's there, we have parts of our brain that pick it up. So even if we don't really know it's an anxiety, if it's something we need to be anxious about, your brain is already processing, right? So anxiety is with you 24/7. Whether your anxiety mechanism is tripped or not, it's always with you. So you don't want to look at it as an enemy, because it means you got to be alert 24/7. But being in anxiety, being alert and having that cortisol and have the pounding heart and all the hormones that go with that isn't good for you. Okay. And so the thing is you got to figure out, how do we mellow from the anxiety? Step number one, understand that it's not your enemy. That's the biggest thing. It is not your enemy. It is truly there to protect us. We all have anxiety to protect us. I guarantee if you're riding down the road and you're, let's say you're driving down the highway and you come to a stop, but you hear a lot of tires squealing and you hear that from behind you, your anxiety is going to kick in without even thinking, like, do I need to take a protective maneuver here? If I can get that word out right. Do I need to do some more maneuvers here? Do I need to pull off? Do I need to go forward because this car may hit me? That's all an automatic thought for you. That's good. If we didn't have anxiety, we wouldn't do that, right? If you thought you heard somebody breaking into your house, it is your anxiety mechanism that kicks in and say, okay, do I call 911? Do I get up? Do I grab a weapon? Do I check? Anxiety. If you had no anxiety, you wouldn't do that. Okay? And you'll see, you talk to people who do sports, a little anxiety is good. It makes you be on your game, work a little harder, practice a little harder. That's a positive use for anxiety. So step number one is stop seeing anxiety as your enemy. And I know if you've lived with it for a while, that can seem hard. And plus, some people look at you kind of funny if you're anxious or whatnot. Ignore them. Understand and tell yourself, anxiety is not my issue. It's not my enemy. Okay, that's step number one. So number two is, what is it trying to protect you from? Identify, what is the anxiety trying to protect you from? Because honestly, it is trying to protect you from something. We don't always know what it is, but if you try to work a little bit with it, try to figure out, what is this trying to protect me from? One, anxiety is not your enemy. It's trying to protect you. What is it trying to protect you from? Because there is something. I know for me, I have asthma. So anybody else will walk through a cloud of cigarette smoke and it doesn't bother them. When I walk through a cloud of cigarette smoke, I am immediately in fight or flight. I've got to identify, how much is it? I've got to identify, where is my inhaler? I've got to identify, do I have my EpiPen? Because if I don't do that and I don't recognize it, I could die. I can be dumping my purse out and hoping someone else realizes I'm having an asthma attack and shoots me with the EpiPen and calls 911. I could die, right? So it's important to understand the trigger. What is the anxiety trying to protect you from? Number two, once you figured out what the anxiety is trying to protect you from, can you remove yourself from it? Right? And if you can, in some cases, in most cases, I do have to. With the asthma thing, I have got to remove myself. And if I cannot, then I take protective measures. And for me, that is getting my inhaler. I have to get my inhaler out and start doing the puffs and have my EpiPen at the ready. So if the inhaler doesn't work for me, I can pop the EpiPen and have my phone and call 911. What I typically do is I tell people, I have asthma, I smell cigarette smoke, I've already taken my puff. If I pass out or if you see me hit the ground, shoot me with the EpiPen and call 911. Okay? I'm taking the steps necessary. That's a plan necessary, right? So, yes, I go into fight or flight, but I institute my plan. I implement my plan. Take the inhaler, have your EpiPen ready, and then if there's anyone near me, notify them. I have asthma. I may hit the ground. I may not be able to breathe. And I may not be able to talk to you. Just shoot me with the EpiPen. Call 911. Okay. So if you can identify your triggers of what has set your anxiety and got you alert, if you can identify and remove yourself from the situation, or sometimes it is, like I walk through what they call it, the eating area. I was in L'Enfant Plaza and all the little places where you have to eat. And for whatever reason, my social anxiety just kicked in. And I got nervous and I just assumed that everybody in there was looking at me. They were judging me. They're going to talk about me. Immediately, I got anxious, right? So I could not necessarily identify why I got that anxious, considering I go here to eat quite a bit. But in this case, I didn't remove myself because I didn't want to run. But what I did start doing is I went into taking deep breaths on the diaphragm, right? Because taking those deep breaths is it's 10 deep breaths from the diaphragm or 2 minutes of breathing is enough to trigger your vagus nervous system, your vagus nerve to turn off and to relax you. So I immediately start breathing. Then I did another thing that I've learned to do that works for me is I started looking around the place to see if everybody was actually looking at me. My brain said, everybody's looking at you. Everybody's looking at you. They're judging you. They're judging you. So I immediately said, okay, let's prove that right or prove it wrong. I started making eye contact with people that were sitting there. Most of them were not even looking at me, and some of them that were looking or they looked up and saw me looking at them, they nodded their head high and I nodded my head high, right? And so it is either implement. So step number one was realize that anxiety is not your issue. Step number two is figure out when you're in an anxious, you've been triggered, try to figure out what has triggered you. Step number three, implement your plan. Okay, so I talked about my plan with asthma where I grabbed my inhaler and I notified people. And I also talked about how my social anxiety just kicked in like wham out of the clear blue sky. And I implemented my plan. I started doing the deep breathing. And my brain kept telling me, everybody's looking at you, everybody's looking at you. And I started to prove it wrong. Those were the thoughts that were coming. And I looked around, I started meeting people. Most of them were not even looking at me. So that wasn't true, right? And so I realized that's not true. With the deep breathing, I was able to calm down. Because again, anxiety is not your enemy. It's really trying to protect you. Sometimes it's trying to protect us way too much for some of us. But by understanding anxiety isn't your enemy, figuring out what your trigger is, and then implement a plan that works for you, right? Deep breathing is always a winner. It is always a winner, but from the diaphragm. Because if you deep breathe from your chest, yeah, you're likely to pass out. You can hyperventilate if you do that. That's not going to help you. You've got to do it from the diaphragm. Nice, big, deep, long breaths. And when you inhale in through the nose and mouth, slowly exhale out of the mouth very slowly. Then take another deep breath. So you don't want to do this. Not going to work for you. You're going to hyperventilate. You kind of get dizzy. You're not getting enough oxygen. So if you breathe like, it's not going to help you at all, period.com. You've got to take your time. Nice deep breath in. Slow out. See how that goes? That kind of breathing will help you. 10 breaths or 2 minutes. Very helpful. Now, for me, I do like to, depending on where I am, I do like to do the shushing sound out because it gives me something else to think about now. if I'm in a crowd of people or I'm on stage waiting to speak to people, I don't do that shushing sound because, people may look at me. Now, if my anxiety is bad enough, I don't care. I'm going to do the shushing sound. I'm going to do what is best for me in the moment. Okay. And I'm telling you, the deep breathing does work. Now, some of you, there are different types of breathing, and I work with my clients and I do different types of breathing. There's all kinds. There's actually a little app where you have a circle where when a circle gets big, you breathe in, a circle gets small, you breathe out. Those kind of visuals help you. Have some of those on your smartphone so that if you're triggered, understand it's not anxiety, it's not your enemy, it's just trying to protect you. Figure out why you're triggered and then use that app to breathe. It is really, really nice. And you don't have to worry about how long you breathe in and out. You literally follow the circle. As it gets smaller and it gets larger, it tells you when to breathe. It is a visual that helps you. And some of it has music so if you're an auditory learner, you learn by hearing and talking. It hits all the signs where it just relaxes you. Okay. So if you enjoy, and that's my motivational nugget for today. Anxiety is not your enemy. That's your protection system. Some of us are really well protected as compared to other people. That is okay. Figure out what your trigger is and implement your plan. Now, if you are, ladies, if you enjoyed this Facebook Live and this YouTube Live today, then I invite you to join my Facebook group. It's called Rising Above Anxiety. It is a free anxiety support group for women. Lots of tips out there, and I will often do Facebook Lives just for the ladies in the group. I do post, and there are other people out there that are tossing in their experiences, everything. Feel free to click on the link to join. The link will either be below the video or above the video, depending on where you're watching from. For those of you on YouTube, I'll put it in the comments in a few minutes after I'm done with this. But thanks for watching, and hopefully you found something helpful. And tell you what, if you catch this on the replay, drop me a thumbs up and let me know what isn't a plan you're going to implement. Is it the breathing? Is it what I do when I have social anxiety? I start making eye contact with people and doing the nod, and people do the nod. And after many, many years, decades, I finally can do a nod back rather than freak out, because that was my thing to do with social anxiety. So let me know what strategy you use, to calm you down when you have anxiety, because that'll help other people, right? Because we're all here in a group to help each other. So that's my tip for the day. That's my motivational nugget for today. And I hope you guys have a great week. It's toward the end of the week, so have a great week, and I will chat with you later.